quite emotional, really. I raced back in the old days at Le Mans in 1967, when there were no barriers, just roads through the countryside. Public roads, they're used every day.
Porsche 917 was obviously one of the most iconic and spectacularly successful race cars ever.
Greatest car I've ever owned.
The 917 was the pinnacle of racing in that era, and it was the best Porsche ever made.
A very fast machine, extremely fast.
There's no car that you walk into your garage that stops you cold like this car.
I know it's in the top 100 cars of all time. Magic's never went down with this car.
What's up, everybody? I'm Chris Jacobs, and I am so stoked to be here with this movie star. This is the hero car from Steve McQueen's 1971 film, Le Mans. This legendary race car was purchased new from the Porsche factory by Steve McQueen and then driven by him in the film Le Mans. It later went on to have a successful racing career, ended up in the collection of a comedy legend, and now will be crossing the Mecum auction block in Kissimmee 2025.
The thing I love the most about Porsches is I love the story of how they started so small and grew so quickly. And there are cars that I call them moment cars. There are moments when things just landed perfectly. It happens in lives, it happens in cultures, it happens in stories. So to me, the 917 is the moment of Porsche where all their work and expertise came together.
Well, the 24 Hours of Le Mans is the most famous long-distance race in the world, if not the most famous race in the world.
You know, Porsche was doing well in racing in the 50s and the 60s, but they always had this one race that they wanted to be at the top step of the podium, and that was the 24 Hours of Le Mans.
Ford won Le Mans in 1966 and 67 with their giant 7-litre engines. So the FIA, of course, Ferrari, Porsche, all the European manufacturers, they all said, we must stop this, we cannot have this. And so the rules changed and the big engines were out completely in 68. And so if you built a prototype, which is what the Porsches were, then you could only 3-litre. But if you built 25, then you could have a 5-litre engine. And at that point, Ferdinand Pier, the racing manager for Porsche, went into action and he nearly bankrupted Porsche, building 25 970s.
If you want to look at just sheer racing, sheer engineering, with only one objective, to go fast, this was it right here. This was the purest, most unadulterated point to me in the history of long distance racing, when the only thing that mattered was what was there in the metal, in the flesh.
The 917, which is a 600 horsepower fire-breathing dragon, it's like one of those dragons from Avatar. The crazy thing about this car, which is a 240 mile an hour car, is like every other Porsche, it's pretty easy to drive.
Well, here we have Porsche 917K, K meaning short tail, as opposed to the long tail. And this particular car, number 022, was bought by Solar Productions for the film Le Mans with Steve McQueen. And it replicated, as mentioned, no different than my race car. And I drove this car during the filming of Le Mans. So to see it now, beautifully restored by one of the best restorers in the business, Joey Cavalieri, let me tell you, better than new.
In 1970, when they ran the 24 Hours Le Mans, they had 3 John Wyer prepped Golf 917s.
When you saw how many cars were in that race, and how many of them were Ferrari 512s, and keep in mind, Ferrari had pretty much, for many years, been the dominant force in long distance racing. That was the point in time when Porsche became the giant.
I really only drove one a couple of times. I've driven for the Ford GT40 for 2 years, 68, 69, when they did ask me to drive the third car at Le Mans with Mike Elwood in 1970. And of course, Le Mans in those days was extremely fast with no chicanes, it was a 4 mile straight. And the car seemed to handle pretty well to me, and it was going well, and we were humming right along. And now the 2 lead cars had 5-litre engines. Our car had a 4.7 litre engine, and the car that ultimately won, Richard Atwood's car, also had a 4.7 litre engine. All 3 factory cars dropped out, and Richard and Hans Hermann, they won the race. And it was the first time Porsche had ever won it overall. And it put them right back on the map and at the head of the sports car field. So it really boosted sales of the regular street cars, and I went enormously.
When we come back, Steve McQueen takes his passion for racing to the next level and begins production on a movie about the famed endurance race, The 24 Hours of Le Mans.